Hey, this is Lex, and welcome to our next episode of Lipstick and Liberation, a podcast from a feminist perspective of a Black woman engaging with the world, art, music, and current events, and coming back and sharing all my thoughts with you guys. This week, I am talking about Sinners, the movie, the phenomenon. I'm sure you've heard about it. The word of mouth has been amazing. Directed by Ryan Coogler, starring Michael B. Jordan. This film was so incredible. And if you have not seen it in IMAX, you need to go and see it in IMAX immediately. It was so beautiful. The cotton fields just really popped off the screen. If you don't know what it's about, get out of here anyway if you have not seen it, because I'm going to spoil the heck out of this. But if you don't know what it's about, it is a movie about the day in the life of twins and their cousin as they get ready to open a juke joint. And once they do, something evil shows up. What I really loved about this film is how this film engaged African spirituality. I think that's something that, quite unfortunately, the experience of slavery and colonialism and white people introducing Christianity as a way to control Black people in the United States once they were brought over from Africa, it had become demonized. And I really love how lovingly Ryan Coogler included this spirituality, and he made it basically the thing that helped to destroy the vampires. And I love that, because so many movies like this where you're dealing with the supernatural, it also always defaults to Christianity as being the solution for evil, The Exorcist, which, that's cool. I'm a person who I actually practice very loosely African spirituality. That's a broad term because obviously Africa's a continent, but I do practice ancestor worship, and I'm not a person that's really experienced. I'm slightly witchy. I try to be careful with messing with things like that because you do have to know what you're doing. So I'm learning little by little, but I love my ancestral altar. I love being able to connect to that. And I really do feel like my connection to that, my connection to my ancestors has helped me to improve my life and the life of my son, who I'm also teaching about that. So I was really excited to see this in a positive aspect. So in the movie, it does include, like I said, it stars Michael B. Jordan playing these twins, Smoke and Stack, and he is incredible in this. I've seen it twice, and the second time I watched it, I really watched how symbiotic their relationship is. There's this scene when they first buy the juke joint, and the guy, Hogwood, who's a white man that they buy it from, he basically the interaction becomes a little bit tense between them when they start talking about the money. And I watched as Smoke and Stack both reach for their guns. And if you really go back and watch the movie, you can see that Stack kind of moves around to the back of Hogwood. They're working in tandem. They know they're threatened. And as twins, there's this unspoken language where Stack immediately goes behind Hogwood so that if anything pops off, he's in between them. He's in danger, not them. Even watching Stack roll the cigarettes for Smoke, and then they're passing the cigarette back and forth. There were just little touches like that where you could tell that their relationship was so interconnected. They were two people, but it felt like they were one. Eventually they split up because they're planning on opening this juke joint. So they stole this money from the Italian mob and the Irish mob up north by turning them against each other. And they've come back south. They've got this money. They want to open this juke joint. So they split up. They get their cousin, Sammy, who is the son of a preacher in the town, and they go out and they each are going about doing things that they need to do to open the juke joint. What I also noticed on my second viewing of this film is how different their journeys are. Smoke goes to get the sign and the food, and then he stops to visit his estranged wife and pay respect to their child who did not live. It's a baby that died, and it's really, really sad, their daughter. And he invites her to come to the juke joint. On the other side, you have Stack, who has a relationship with a woman who her granddaddy was half Black. So very, very, very loosely one drop rule related to, tied into Black culture. But she gets off the train on the white side of things. She's married to a white man. She's clearly passing through society and looks white. So it's not ideal for her and Stack to be together. And he makes that clear. But she is intrusive. When he sees her at the train station, she doesn't care about the fact that she's white and she's running up hollering at this Black man. She's immediately in his face, in his ear. And then later that night, he never invites her to the juke joint. She just comes along anyway. and shows up. So I noticed that between their relationships, where Smoke was tied in with Annie, he made time to go even see Annie and wanted her to come back. Stack's avoiding his love interest, and he doesn't even invite her to the juke joint. She just shows up and comes. One of the most amazing performances, which was from the newcomer, the actor, I can't remember his name at the moment, but he played Sammy. Wow, he was incredible, and his music, his voice. I never really had a huge opinion on the blues. I've listened to it with my dad and stuff, but I think any of us, growing up, we listen to our parents' music, and it's just part of them. It doesn't sometimes feel like it's really something that we'd be interested in or it's relevant to us because we have our own music. So I never paid a lot of attention to it. But in this movie, I just felt like it was so beautiful, like hearing him sing, hearing him play. And he has a gift. And in the movie, his character has a gift. But that actor himself, he has a gift. But in the movie, Sammy, his father disapproves of his music, which I think a lot of us who grew up in the Black church know. Pretty much any music that's not gospel music is considered the devil's music. And so here blues is given that same kind of treatment. But Sammy is, and at the beginning of the movie, they talk about different spiritualities, that he is a griot. He has a musical gift that he transcends. When he plays, he can tear a portal into time where people in the future and the past, all of their music, all of those experiences come together. So Stack and him go out to get people to play at the juke joint. They go out and get Delta Slim, played by Delroy Lindo. Delroy Lindo is a national treasure. Why does he not have an Academy Award? I have loved everything he's been in since I've seen him in Malcolm X, Spike Lee's Malcolm X in 1992. When he played West Indian Archie, he has always been incredible. He was in The Five Bloods a couple years ago, which he played like a MAGA war vet, a black one at that. Amazing actor. But he is so good here in Sinners. If he doesn't get nominated for Best Supporting Actor, then I know something's up. He was incredible. And I love the story that he told about his friend who got lynched because he took too much money out at the train station, and they just decided that he had robbed a white man and they killed him. And immediately he pivots from that into humming and singing. And it was so poetic. It really showed how Black people, how we use music to deal with our grief and our trauma, how we channel that stuff into that. So that was such a powerful moment. And as a person who, my parents grew up in the Jim Crow South, my dad used to talk to us a lot about those experiences. My dad didn't even go to integrated school till he was in high school, his senior year, matter of fact, in Louisiana. And he used to tell us about things like that. You could never show that you had too much money. If you went into a store, you had to get exactly what you're going to get and get out. You couldn't linger. I wrote a paper about his experience in Jim Crow when I was a freshman in college. And I remember him saying that it's so weird for him because he tells us those things, but they don't really apply to our life directly anymore. But those were survival things to them. Those were survival things. Black people having too much joy, having too much money, having too much of anything was a threat. It was a threat to white supremacy. And that made it so that were afraid to show what they were, who they really, really are. They had to be somebody different in front of white people for survival's sake. So that's also, I think, what tied into what made the juke joint scene and watching them all together before they got to the juke joint. Because, man, you fall in love with these characters in this movie. I didn't want to leave them as somebody. And you're riding around with Sammy. They're all in the car. They're going to pick up cornbread to get them to work the door. We're getting to know all these people. And we're getting to see Smoke's relationship with Annie and how in love they are. And then she's coming to fry the fish. We meet the Chinese store owners, Grace and Bo, and they're going to come along too. So all these people, we're learning about them. And they're coming to this juke joint at night. So what happens? Vampires happen. Now, what I love about his choice of vampires is when you think about it, Black people have had to deal with violence from white people just consistently, as far as the Jim Crow South. But there are things called sundown towns where if you were Black, you didn't want to be out at night. So vampires actually make a lot of sense as a horror villain for Black people when you think about that. Because when are they dangerous? At night. If you're out at night and there's vampires out, they're going to get you. So I am so surprised that with that consideration, we haven't had more horror movies that include vampires in that context in the South. Because, Ryan Coogler's mind is so amazing, But when I realized that, I was like, wow, like this should have been something we already should have a genre for this. We already should have multiple vampire movies that consider that, because sundown is unsafe in a lot of those areas for Black people because of Jim Crow, the Klan, and white violence. So anyway, the vampire Remick, he's the main one. He shows up at the house of these two Klan members. He's burning up. Some Native Americans are chasing him down, hunting him. And he gains their trust because he's a white man, and they let him in. And the wife, she goes to talk to the Native Americans when they show up. She tells them, oh, nobody showed up here. They try to tell her, this person's not who you think it is, but she's not listening to them because they're not white. She comes back. He's turned her husband, and her husband and him turn on her. So now we have 3 vampires, and we have the opening of the juke joint. This scene, there's a scene there that you're never going to forget if you go to the movies and you see this, especially IMAX, where Sammy is playing. And when we talked about, he's a griot, so he has this amazing gift, and he's able to transcend, and he tears that time warp, and you see people on turntables, people on electric guitars, you see ancestors, ancient Black music practices, people dancing. The Chinese couple that's there, Bo and Grace, they're engaged, they're dancing. We see Chinese ancestors. Like, this scene is so beautiful, and the music and the moment, it attracts the vampires. That gift, that power attracts them. So in that time also, like I told you guys, Mary has shown up to the juke joint because she's not invited, but she's known in the Black community because of her grandfather and the relationship they've had thus because of that. So they let her in. When the vampires show up, they ask to be let in because part of vampire lore is, you have to be invited in. They can't just come into your house. And rightfully, the Black people at the juke joint are suspicious of them. They're like, no, we're not going to let you in, actually. You can go down the road. They play this song, and God, I will tell you that I had that song stuck in my head forever, and I was creeped out every time I thought about it. It's like called, I don't know what it's called. I think Poor Robin, but it just keeps repeating, pick poor Robin clean. I pick poor Robin clean. And that stuck in my head. And they play this to try to get them to let them in. And Stack is sitting there nodding his head. But Smoke, he's the more serious twin. He's the more brutal twin. And he's like, no, these guys aren't coming in. And during the course of the juke joint, like, Smoke's adding up the books. And they're not making that much money because some of the Black people that are there, they're paying with wooden nickels. They're paying with credit. Like, they don't have that much money because they're sharecroppers. And Stack is telling them, hey, let them have a good time. It's a bunch of Black people in here having a great time. Let them enjoy. Then they'll come back. And Smoke's like, we need more money. But when they go to the door and see those white vampires and they offer them gold, Smoke refuses to take their money because he says it's not worth the risk. What if they come in? Because they're trying to convince a couple of people are like, hey, just let them in. No, if they come in, what if somebody looks at the woman too long? What if somebody steps on their shoe? Then we're going to have violence here. So there's no reason to let them in. Just let them go. Well, Mary, like I said, who's not invited, she ends up talking to Stack. Her and Stack were lovers, as we talked about. And she tells Stack, basically, let me go out here and get this money from them. And Stack is telling her, like, you should do that. She's leveraging her whiteness because she's mostly white and she appears as white, that she's going to go out here and get this money from them. Now, when she goes out, of course, they bite her and they turn her. And then she comes back in. She's invited back in because they know her. So Cornbread sees her and she has to come back in and he lets her back in. And I don't know, it's hard to decide what Ryan Coogler was trying to say. I'm really waiting for the director's commentary to be for sure. But I felt like that was kind of an indictment of people who are guests in Black spaces. I really didn't like Mary's character for these choices because at the end of the day, Mary is not Black. She's living a white life. She may have a Black ancestor, but she's a guest in this space and an uninvited guest. Like I said, they didn't invite her to the juke joint. She barged her way in. And then she did not respect what the owner said. She did not respect Smoke saying, we don't want their money. She decided that she knew better than Smoke and what was best for them. So she goes out, she gets bit, and she comes back in and ends up biting Stack. So she's the person that introduces the vampirism into the juke joint. Once they catch her, they shoot at her and she tells them, we're going to kill all of you. on her way out. So they know something's up. Smoke is devastated because she bit Stack. So now Stack's neck bleeds out. He dies in his arms. And that's his twin brother. Like I said, twins, they're very, very close. So that was very devastating for him. And Annie, who is, very versed in hoodoo, so she understands the spirit world a lot. She's starting to suspect that something is not right because they shot Mary and she got up and she ran out. So something is afoot. While all this is going on, Cornbread, who was watching the door, he ended up going to the bathroom. And of course, the vampires got him. So when he tries to come back, there's this great scene. I mean, this scene, there's so many great scenes in Sinners. But I really love the scene when Cornbread was trying to get back in because Annie questions him like, why do you need an invitation to get back in? You've been coming and going all night. Why do you need an invitation to get back in? And he tries to use any and every excuse. Oh, we need to be kind to each other. I don't want to just walk in without being invited. I mean, he's doing whatever he can to try to trick them into letting him back in because they know him based on the familiarity. And one of the things I love about Smoke here, Smoke doesn't really believe in the spiritual world, but he has such respect for Annie. He believes in her. So when she's making it clear, something ain't right, he's deferring to her and her judgment here. So they decide, no, we're not going to offer you an invite to come back in. So Cornbread said, well, give me my money so I can go. When Smoke goes to pay him, he rips him out of there. They realize he's a vampire. They pull Smoke back in before he gets bit. They examine him. Then Annie explains, what's going on. This is what we need to do. Stack wakes up. She and Stack gets put out too. She throws garlic water on Stack. That's when she's for sure, excuse me, I misspoke. But that's when she's for sure that these are vampires because the garlic water burns Stack. So now they're understanding that all these people that left have turned into vampires. They're outside and they're waiting for them. And Remick makes it clear that he wants Sammy. He wants Sammy for his gift. So eventually they all decide what they have to do. They end up eating garlic, making sure nobody is a vampire in there. And they start trying to make a plan. But it goes awry when Grace, who is the Asian woman who is the storekeeper, her husband gets turned. And she realizes that Remick and her husband, they threaten her daughter. And she realizes that that's a real threat, that they could go and get her because, who's going to see their father outside trying to lure them out and not let him in? Like, that obviously they would. And a lot of people were angry at her. I was angry at her in the theater too, because she's the person who eventually offers the invitation to the vampires, because at that point she knows she can't go out there and fight them by herself. She'll just get turned. And her best chance at killing her husband and making sure she doesn't get turned is if they fight them as a group, and making sure that she doesn't want the town to get turned into vampires either. She's basically like, you guys want to stay in here and not do anything and wait till dawn. I can't do that. I have my daughter out there to protect. And there's so many people that had a problem with that. But as a person who's also a mother, I get that. Like, I 100% got it. I could sit with the fact that I understood why she did that, but I was also angry at her. And I think people tried to take the critique a little too far because she was an Asian woman. And she basically put all these black people who were left in there at risk. But she didn't really have a lot of options. And I think that's intentional in Ryan Coogler's writing. They had to have somebody who was going to invite the vampires in to create the action. So they put that in there because she's the only person that has a living daughter. Like, Annie has her daughter that's deceased, and she gets Smoke to agree to make sure that if she gets bit, that he will not leave her soul trapped, because she says vampires are trapped in this world and they can't go and rejoin the ancestors. So if one of them bites me, you have to kill me because I don't want to be trapped. I have my baby waiting on the other side. And Grace was basically the same way. I got my kid to consider. So once she invites them in, the fighting ensues. Grace does kill her husband, but she also dies and burns up. But I'm pretty sure she was happy with that because that means there's nobody that can trick Lisa. Both of them are gone and her daughter's going to be safe. Once the violence ensues, though, it's sad. It's exciting and it's thrilling and you're on the edge of your seat, but it's sad because you spent the whole movie with these characters. Like, I cared so much about everybody in that juke joint. And shout out to Ryan Coogler, because that's something that's really hard to do in horror, is to make people care so much about your characters that they're genuinely sad or upset when something happens to them. And he does that. Another thing that I liked about Sinners that in the ensuing vampire fighting that I noticed and realized, especially on the second viewing, is that everybody kept their promises in this movie. At one point, Delta Slim said, if the devil ever comes for Sammy, that, the devil had come for him multiple times, that he would have to go through him. So once the vampires make it clear that they want Sammy and they break in and they're all fighting, Delta Slim cuts his arm and he sacrifices himself so that Sammy and the others can attempt to get away. And I just thought that was so beautiful because his character, he was a drunk harmonica player. He had been through so much trauma as a black man coming up in Jim Crow. And people treated him like he was just this drunk old fool. But like I said, he kept his promise. When he said that he was going to make sure that nothing happened to Sammy and the devil came for him, he was going to have to go through him. He did that. And Sammy was able to get away. Stack and Smoke wrestle. Stack is actually the person who killed Annie, which was really sad for me. That scene where Smoke had to stake her to make sure she didn't turn into a vampire, that was really heartbreaking for me. And their love story was really one of the highlights of this movie. Of course it was imperfect. Of course, Smoke did abandon her after their child passed away. He became a gangster in Chicago. But once they were back together, the mutual respect and the way they played off of each other, especially the way he deferred to her about spiritual matters, and their relationship just meant so much to me. I really, really enjoyed them. The actors, they had such great chemistry. I think most people who see this movie are going to walk away thinking about them as a couple because they really and truly embodied something so special on screen. So when she passes away, we have Smoke trying to protect Sammy. Smoke and Stack are fighting upstairs. Stack is a vampire now, so that's really, really hard for Smoke to try to deal with the fact that his twin brother is a vampire. He basically is supposed to kill him. Sammy continues to try to get away because the vampires are after him. The vampire Remick does catch up with him, and there's this scene where he basically baptizes him. Sammy starts praying. He's basically terrified now, and I think that's one of the things. Christianity is so embedded in our community through the way it was introduced to us that I think a lot of us, even me, myself, I would not call myself a Christian anymore. I don't practice Christianity in the traditional sense. But it's so embedded in us that sometimes we just default back to that. And so Sammy, who I believe was not a believer at all, I just don't think that Christianity was a functional part of Sammy's life in how he viewed himself, even though he was a preacher's son. I don't think he was a devout believer. But in that moment, he starts saying the Lord's Prayer, and Remick says, the colonizer gave my people that prayer too, because Remick is Irish. So he is basically saying that the people that colonized Ireland and made them Catholics gave them the same prayer. So he's saying it to him. And again, with vampire lore, a lot of times Christianity and stuff like that, crosses, etc., are ways to harm them. I thought it was very telling in this movie that is not something that was harmful for them. Annie does mention holy water at one point, but at no time do they use anything like crosses or anything associated with Christianity to try to fight the vampires. And I think that's intentional. But in that scene, what saves Sammy is his guitar. His guitar, he hits him, and I guess the guitar has some silver in it because the disc starts burning Remick. And that gives enough time for Smoke, who had been dispatching of his brother Stack at the time, to come out and stake Remick. And then they watch in the sunrise as the vampires burn up. Now, during that time when the vampires were there, because when the vampires bite and kill somebody, they are able to gain their memories and perspectives. The vampires did let Smoke and Stack know that the clan was going to come back and get rid of them in the morning if they hadn't showed up. So basically, a part of the movie is realizing that these black people having a great time in the juke joint were always in danger of some kind of violence, whether it had been the violence of the vampires or the violence of the clan. So that's kind of like a sad reality that was also built into the film, which, like I said, Ryan Coogler just did such an amazing job with this. So with knowing that, Smoke sends Sammy on his way, and this is another promise that is kept. Stack told Sammy that he was going to get to drive on the way back, and here's Sammy. He got the car. He's got his broken guitar. There's only the handle left of the guitar, and he takes off. He's got this scar on his face, and he's bloody, and he's tore up, and Smoke stays behind because he's going to handle the clan. He told the clan his promise that if they came onto his property, that they were going to shoot him dead. And so he's intent on doing this, and he stays there, and he sets up everything to take them out. So when they do show up, and they do show up, the guy who sold them the sawmill in the beginning, Hogwood, does bring all of his clan buddies to kill them, and they are ambushed by just Smoke. And I mean, this scene, I remember seeing this and I was thinking, I want every black movie, no matter what it's about, to end with a scene of black people just killing the Klan. I want that. I don't care if it's a romantic comedy. At the end, they should just start killing the Klan, because that scene was so cathartic, especially after everything the characters went through. You know, the vampires just burned up. But seeing him able to enact that kind of vengeance on people who were intent on harming them just for existing and having a good time. And it also made me think back to the story about Rice that Delta Slim told, where there's this just resentment about black people having so much money. There was this resentment that they were able to even buy this sawmill. And even though they were right, because Smoke and Stack did steal that money from a gang, there's just assumption that black people can only come by these funds by being evil and cunning. So now the Klan, we have a right to go back and off them. Watching Smoke get rid of them was amazing. And then there's an amazing, amazing scene of him when he takes off the swag bag that I think I called it the wrong thing. I'm so sorry. But he takes this off, the protection that Annie gave him, because he's prepared to die. And he looks over and he sees his Annie and their baby. And she tells him, to put out the cigarette, because he gets a cigarette to smoke as he's dying, and he can hold his baby. And there's this scene of her passing the baby from the ancestral realm to him, and him saying, "Daddy's here," basically. And Smoke dies. So we end the movie where it starts with Sammy returning to the church and his father telling him that he needs to drop the guitar and be released from his sins so that he will never have to face evil like that again, that he attracted that evil. Instead of comforting him when he comes in bloody and torn up, he uses it for his sermon. He even stops his mom from going to him. And Sammy doesn't put the guitar down. In fact, it goes straight to him being a blues player, like in the future. And I remember thinking, because that's how entrenched, like I said, I am not a practicing Christian, but that stuff is so entrenched in us that I thought after everything that Sammy went through that night that he was going to put the guitar down. It was actually such a thrill to see him choose his gift, because his gift is what made him connected to the Creator. That's the reality, not the practice of Judeo-Christianity as introduced to black people through slavery. That's not what connected him. That's not what made him feel like that. And there's a scene at the end. There's 2 end credit scenes, so make sure you guys stay till the very end. Even if you left earlier, you missed some things. But he plays this Little Light of Mine, which is a very popular, old and like a very historical black song, gospel song. And I think Sammy's light is his musical ability, his talent to play the guitar. And he plays that at the end as he's playing as the final scene. And I think that's his connection to God. I don't think he needs, like I said, the traditional Judeo-Christian pathway to God, because he has that. And in the mid-credit scene, we find out that Smoke did not kill Stack at all. Stack lives on, and Stack and Mary are saved because he agreed not to do anything to Sammy. So he visits Sammy and they talk. And Sammy says, I still have nightmares about that day, but before everything happened, it was one of the best days of my life. And you know what's amazing about that is that movie was so good that I believe him, because I loved being with those characters. I loved being with them before all that stuff went down. I could have spent the rest of the movie with them just having a good time at the juke joint. They were free. And they say that, Stack says that was the last time he felt free, the last time he saw the son and saw his brother. Now he's stuck for an eternity with Mary, which, he made a promise to Mary that they were going to go to hell together, and here they are. So like I said, all the promises were kept in this film. But I really agree with these characters that this was such a beautiful, beautiful day, because that's what I think about the most when I left this movie. It was scary. And the vampirism, I loved all the symbolism about it, like I said earlier, but that's what made it so hard was I loved these characters. I could go and watch that movie again and again because I didn't ever want to not be with everybody in that juke joint. Pearline, Sammy, Stack, Smoke, Delta Slim, Cornbread. Like, these people mean something to me. So I just want to say that Hollywood needs to give Ryan Coogler however much money he needs to make movies. I would go and see Sinners over and over and over again just so I could be with those characters again. I felt so connected to them. And there's so much. It was so thoughtfully written. Everything mattered. Everything counted for something. And I said before, every time Trump gets elected president, we get a horror movie by a Black director that's an original horror film, and it's so amazing. We got Get Out the last time from Jordan Peele. And so, man, I mean, there's nothing great about a Trump presidency, but being able to get this from Ryan Coogler, it was something else. So I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for art that makes living in these hard times tolerable. This movie has created so much discussion and so many people have been talking about it. I'm just so grateful for this kind of art. So thank you guys for tuning into this episode. I know it probably got very long, but I really could go on for hours about this movie, and I won't do that to you guys. You're free to engage with discussion with me and discussion on my social media, but that's all I have to say for right now, just to spare you.